Hey, how's it going, guys? So we're back with more Star Citizen videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. So it's been a hot minute since I did one of these. I think it's been like about maybe 3 weeks since I watched a video by Morphologis, and this one's called "An Architect Reviews the RSI Zeus Mark II." And shout out and credit goes to the Morphologis for the video. Now, I do remember the Zeus Mark II a little bit. It was actually one of the first ships that I saw on Star Citizen. I remember I did watch a Inside Star Citizen video and watched and like listened to the people that were behind designing and creating the ship. If I remember correctly, it was specifically meant for well, not specifically. It could be used for like cargo transport and things like that. It has some combat prowess, if I remember correctly, but besides that, I don't really remember much. Because, like I said, it was one of the first ships that I saw in Star Citizen, and that was a while ago. So this should refresh my mind a little bit, and let's see what kind of positive and negative things Morphologis has to say about this ship. So without anything else, let's just jump right into it.
This is the RSI Zeus Mark II, a ship whose success and design execution makes the
blue and white
earlier
version.
ships feel a bit like intern side projects. And that's because it demonstrates just how much better CIG has gotten at their craft. No longer delivering just pretty facades, but also well-considered interiors and exteriors that fit together like they were always meant to be. So join me as I take you on a tour of both the CL Cargo and ES Exploration variants, both inside and out, in this latest installation of An Architect Reviews, where I'll show you exactly why this ship sets a new bar. And if by the end you think I did a good job and you want to see more videos on video game design like this, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Just like I hope you won't forget to check out the sponsor of today's video, Incogni. My audience is a pretty smart crowd, so I know enough law as it. Incogni.com, not for you to get in.
Concept to reality.
So I was probably a little bit harsh there in the intro. Pretty much every ship in Star Citizen is done quite well, except for the Rock TS. That thing sucks. But one of the big challenges for CIG's ship team through the years has been matching up a ship's stunning concept with reality. Obviously, ships don't come into being fully realized. They usually start life as concept art, with sometimes an accompanying concept model that's used to generate the art or generated alongside the art. But when CIG started off a long time ago, these models didn't take into consideration any ship metrics whatsoever because they weren't really established. Things like standard corridor sizes, door sizes, module sizes, engine sizes, and even hangar sizes weren't really figured out yet back when they first started.
Is that the
This
Mercury?
caused a lot of problems later on for the ship teams when they had to make all that stuff that was in concept fit into the model and make it look like it did before. This is what happened with ships like the Carrack and the Mercury Star Runner. As cool as they turned out to be, they didn't really match what was originally planned. Having had the pleasure of speaking and working with a number of current and former members of the CIG ship team, I know well then that this has prompted CIG to hone their process over the years to help overcome these problems. Often from the start now, the concepts are imagined with the metrics in mind to help create a framework on which to realize the outcomes so that they closely match those initial, very evocative concepts. But it's an ongoing process, and there's always new issues that crop up, causing them to have to go back and refine the process further. Enter then the Zeus Mark II in both variants, a ship that might have flown straight off the pages of an artist's sketchbook. At 45.7 meters long, with a beam of 34.3 meters and a height of 8 meters, this medium ship is just slightly smaller than the Crusader Industries C1 ship, a ship I previously lauded as one of the best ones that they've ever done.
That was a while ago,
I'm gonna bring up the footage of the interior here and the exterior so you guys get a little bit of a refresher of what that thing looks like. Also, as another reminder, this thing's about as big as a 737 with its doors intact. So it's big, but it's not huge. Looking at the Zeus then, from its instantly iconic recognizable triangular silhouette to its finer layering details that purposely expose mechanicals up close to instill a sense of power and reality to the ship, it's a collection of all the best things that the teams have learned over the years so far. Note how it consistently employs its triangular design language throughout the ship's artful paneling, from its
triangular
to its
design seems to be RSI's signature,
even to its integrated partially hidden rear thrusters, which fit with the angles of the ship's design. I've sketched over for it for you guys to be able to see a little bit more clearly what I'm talking about. You can see how the form, the paneling, and the details all line up with this overarching language. If I may critique it here though, and this is just my opinion, so if you like this design, don't feel too offended. I do feel that there may be too many greebles along the spine of the ship, which disrupt some of the nice lines that go from the canopy to the rear. There's this spot in the center that feels kind of disrupted and at a weird angle from the rest of the ship, which could have been better continued and felt a little bit smoother like the sides and underside of the ship if a few of these mechanicals were just covered up. But ultimately, again, this is just my personal opinion, and ultimately greebling adds some visual presence and believability to a ship. It's been done on countless sci-fi ships across countless IPs, and there's a reason for doing it. It doesn't matter if it makes real strategic or aerodynamic sense, it's about the rule of cool, and this ship looks cool. Shifting now to the underbelly, I also like how well considered this part of the ship was, where on a lot of ships it tends to be left over as forgotten and underdeveloped. It features a lot of different materials, but one of the ones that I really like is its
really
nod
slick
to its heritage, the Zeus Mark I, which started off as one of the first quantum-capable ships in the Star Citizen universe, and it was inspired by our modern-day space shuttle. If you look closely at the underbelly, you'll notice that there are some tiles here, these space shuttle-type thermal tiles.
I mean, now he mentions it, yeah, it really does look like our modern day space shuttles too. And by the way, fun fact, the RSI Zeus Mark II was the very first ship that I checked out, and I still haven't really checked out the Mark I yet.
That even have circular holes in them where they would have injected waterproofing agents to basically keep the tiles on board the shuttle while it was on the ground and exposed to moisture. It's a nice little subtle nod for nerds who appreciate the finer details like this. It really helps give the ship a sense of history. I also like how the panels are separated by these larger lines with a darker border that help make the whole thing feel well considered, and how all of them fit together like a puzzle without creating any 9-degree angles. It's a really nice touch that also connects with the top side's more angular language. In terms of differences between the two variants, they're really subtle. If you look closely, the CL variant actually has 2 additional struts towards the front, which I think is meant to kind of note that it needs a little bit more structural reinforcement because it hauls more cargo. I think that's a nice little touch that nods to the lore of the ship itself.
I mean, which color do you guys like better on the RSI Zeus Mark II? The blue or the white? I mean, for me personally, I kind of like the blue because it makes it stand out and makes it look a little bit more unique compared to the other ships. Because the white, I mean, sure, the white still looks clean, but it looks very similar to the shuttle and just like, something similar to what we have today. So for me personally, I like the blue a little bit more.
It also has obviously a different paint job, but that's the most obvious thing. But the biggest difference is that the CL variant on the rear has a hidden door for a tractor beam boom arm that deploys when you want to load up its much larger cargo bay of 128 SCU. But at this point, I've heaped a lot of praise on the Zeus, with some exceptions for a little critique. But what makes it exceptionally well realized isn't that it just has a really good looking exterior. This is something we've seen before in other ships. It's that it works really well with the interior, how the whole thing has been considered holistically instead of one thing outweighing the other in its refinement. Now then, let's step on board so I can show you what I mean. Both variants have 3 ingress and egress points. One from the most obvious location at the rear of the ship at the rear ramp, a second less obvious one from a hidden entrance underneath with a ladder located to the port side of the forward landing strut, and yet another hidden entrance above the wing on the port side where there's an unfolding panel that reveals a small docking collar. This immediately gives the ship a major security advantage over ships like its competitor, the C1, which only has a single entry-exit point. A real risk if you have a fire on board and you need to get out because you can't put it out in time. Now let's step on board though, first starting with the ES variant. The cargo bay here feels well sized for an exploration ship. It's large enough to fit some extra supplies and perhaps a small ground vehicle, but nothing massive and certainly not big enough to do any serious cargo hauling. Turning to the ramp door, there's a deliberate expression on both variants of the door's mechanism displayed through the glass, and this is something you're going to see repeated throughout the whole ship in small little ways. See if you can spot them before I say anything about it. It's a purposeful, unnecessary embellishment that just helps sell the mechanical realism of the ship in the Star Citizen universe.
Yeah, I was
kind
about
of
to say,
suggesting that they're not faking much in this game. Everything's kind of really mechanically considered. I particularly like the dark gray, white, and blue accented color palette used to highlight and express some of the interior structure through these ribs and also through the lighting that is encased in them to illuminate the space. In between the structure, you'll also find access doors to the ship's systems, which you'll find in this ship is spread throughout the ship strategically in anticipation of the upcoming engineering system, armor system, and potential to have systems damaged by a stray round passing through the ship where it couldn't before. This is an important design consideration that is yet another reason for ships to have a new metric considered upon concepting, and you'll see that realized through the ship's interior. Such as here with the integrated location for the fire extinguisher and the embellishment of the location of the fuel tank on the ship, which I would assume if it were to be hit would cause a major fire, which is why the fire extinguisher is so close to it. Looking at the CL variant, you'll notice that the space is noticeably larger, especially at the rear section, than the ES, allowing for its 128 SCU. It's much more of a cargo hauler then. It's also a much deeper space, taking up some of the interior spaces we'll see later on to allow for that additional cargo. Some more subtle changes include a change from a series of stairs to a landing now in front of the door, which I actually prefer over the ES variant, and a weapon locker where there was none before, which someone pointed out you could actually use for tractor beams. That makes a lot of sense for a cargo variant, and it's probably what you would want to store there because there's another rack further up in the ship where you can store some real serious weapons. And speaking of the cargo grid, I also want to call your attention to just how well detailed the floor is. They've been doing palms and screws and stuff for a long time on ship interiors, but this one's done really well. It doesn't feel like it's overdone. There's a lot of grip plating where you might expect to see it so that you don't slip if it were to become wet. Now though, let's take a trip forward on the ES variant. We'll step now first into the hallway through a new articulated RSI themed door that's in two pieces. It's a new design type in the RSI design language that I've never seen in any other ship before, so it's something that we're probably going to start seeing on other ships like the Polaris, the Galaxy, and the upcoming Perseus. But it opens onto a much smaller and cozier corridor that takes on a different color palette. It gets rid of the whites and exchanges them for some darker grays and accent blues to highlight the structure yet again, like it did in the cargo bay. So again, there's an expression of structure and mechanicals. It's a consistent theme throughout the exterior and interior of this RSI ship. I particularly like the integrated lighting scheme here on the baseboard next to the structure, as well as in between the bays on the ceiling. And I like how the structure sweeps underneath the floor plating, the floor decking, to give it more thickness visually in a subtle way to make it feel more substantial and real, like there are plates and layers beneath what you see on the surface. You also may notice that there's a gun rack in the ES variant's corridor. This is the one that was moved to the cargo bay on the CL variant. In all cases though, what I really like about these gun racks is that they are lockable with a closing door, something that was absent on earlier CIG ship designs, and something that I expressed concern about, considering that there is reason to not want to let just anybody take weapons that board your ship. Exiting the corridor on the door on the immediate left, we step now into the crew quarters, which contains 3 bunks, a nice little seating area, and 3 lockers that contains the personal inventory for the 3 people that would be piloting the ship. The space though does tend to feel a little bit cold thanks to the blue accents and the cooler lighting, something that could have been mitigated by having some point lights that were a bit warmer in temperature to make the living space just feel a little bit cozier. I also think the bench feels a little bit harsh, a little bit stiff, so at least for the ES variant it could have looked just a little bit more comfortable. Looking at the bunks, there's also an empty bunk where they've got some shelves. Maybe it would have been better here to have some doors on this, or maybe even to have located the lockers here instead to give a little bit more space for like a seating area or a viewing area just in the crew quarters, especially again on the ES variant, where I think it should just have a few more creature comforts. At the back of the bunk area, you also find the ship's only head, which is small and nothing really to write home about. Looking at the CL variants of both of these spaces, the hallway is shorter and doesn't have that weapon locker like I said, and the crew quarters is just a little bit shorter and gets rid of that bench, but that's about it. It's basically exactly the same as the other one. Returning to the ES variant, stepping into the hall reveals a small porthole that peers into the ship's galley and straight out to the exterior through the ship's only outward-facing porthole. It's unfortunate.
I gotta say, the crew quarters, like the bunks and everything, it's very small. But then again, this is not a really huge ship, but it is a little cramped up. So Definitely not for someone who's claustrophobic.
A rarity to see in Star Citizen ships, so it's a very welcome presence. It's nice to be able to think about sitting here and having a meal and looking out onto the world to have a sense of the universe around me, like when I'm landing on some exotic planet or traveling through quantum space or even a jump point. That also helps extend a space that would otherwise maybe feel just a little bit more compressed. In terms of size, there's plenty of storage here for food on the ES variant, and it's only slightly smaller on the CL, a still well-appointed ship for a 3-person crew. Continuing back out onto the corridor for our tour forward, beyond the stairs into the next area beyond this bulkhead is where the differences between the CL and ES cease. Here you'll find it's a combination space, featuring on the right side a series of additional access hatches for other important ship mechanicals, as well as a new engineering console. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a fire extinguisher, as well as an access ladder to that exit I talked about earlier near the forward landing strut. Actually, now that I think about it, there wasn't a fire extinguisher in the galley where you'd think there would be. That's probably a little bit of a funny oversight. Oh well, just be careful when you guys are cooking.
So that's a safety hazard.
Combination space though, you'll also see a set of 3 suit lockers which sit directly across from the portside docking ring that I talked about earlier, hidden behind those outer paneling sets. This whole space then is one of the better demonstrations of how to better arrange space when space is limited. Each of these programmatic elements in this space have a relationship with one another and relate to how the space is used by the user. The EVA suits are used for changing into when you need to go outside of the airlock or when you need to go down through the ladder, and it's also a great space that you might want to vent as an airlock if the engineering section catches on fire or you need to separate the rear section of the ship which is heavily damaged and have a safe exit to get out of the ship in case there's no way to save it. It really shows that they were thinking about players and how they were going to use it with all these new gameplay systems. Now though, let's step onto the more exciting place on the ship, the one that you probably have been waiting for. The flight deck or bridge, depending on how you want to say it. Through yet another bulkhead, providing yet more safety for the pilots in case of the need to EVA or a decompression in the rear section of the ship, where there's no atmosphere, you'll find to the left and right yet more access doors for mechanicals. This is yet another sign again of how they've changed the way they're thinking about how ships are designed and how components are laid out, so that when a round goes through the ship, not everything is damaged catastrophically. And a little bit more forward to the right of that, you'll also see yet another weapon locker, this time containing a large slot for a heavy weapon like a railgun or a rocket launcher. Yet another well-considered amenity located close at hand for pilots for defending the ship or for ease of access when needing to exit into a potentially hostile area. Forward yet a little bit more, you may have also overlooked, if you've already toured the ship by now, that under the flight seats there are viewing windows onto the ship's missile magazine, hidden from the exterior by retracting doors. This is yet another follow-up to this language I've been talking about of revealing mechanicals throughout the ship.
Missile bay.
I love this consistency. The real showpiece, though, of the space is this incredible front view canopy with its 3 tightly arranged V formation pilot, co-pilot, and gunner seats. They're also each hung from the ceiling and when occupied, turn and slide forward to give the occupants a better unobstructed view of the ship's exterior through this expansive canopy. With one minor obstruction for the pilot, who has a kind of thing in the way directly above the head where the mount connects to the canopy of the seat that blocks your way of seeing, say, doors opening for a hangar above you, which is what I found to be a problem with it when I first flew it.
Okay, so there are some blind
Just
spots.
a minor little nitpick here. The flight controls are also more minimal than earlier ships, taking advantage of the projected UI elements that are new thanks to the updated multifunction displays brought in with 3.242, which also reintroduces helmet projected displays, which we had a really long time ago, so again, you don't need as many MFD screens in the ship itself. I also want to point out that there are struts on the canopy like other RSI ships, but they don't impede the vision of the pilot directly ahead, instead leaving them to the side and to the periphery just to give you a little bit of visual structure and presence while flying it around. It's not egregious like ships such as the Constellation, which I hope they go back and rework. It was brought in originally by the Mantis and Scorpius when those came out some years ago. Now though, let's talk about how it flies. The canopy design, like I already talked about, makes for excellent visibility when flying around, a much appreciated design element when navigating tight hangar spaces or obstructions when looking to land. The Zeus also has excellent maneuverability, acceleration, and a modest top speed of 1 kilometer a second when in nav mode. One interesting novelty though is that it's one of the only ships to have functional co-pilot seats in the game at present, which allows you to fly the ship from any of the 3 seat positions. The one weird thing about it though is that in practice there's no seat hierarchy. I found that sometimes when I was sitting in the pilot forward seat that the co-pilot could control the ship instead. A little bit of a weird, annoying bit that they probably should fix and give us manual control over.
I'm the captain now.
In terms of specs though, the ship comes equipped with 2 size 4 gimbaled weapons controlled by the forward pilot seat and a lower turret on both variants that comes equipped with 2 size 3 weapons, making it good for close air support or defense. But that lack of a top turret on both the CL and ES variant mean that these ships have a significant blind spot in combat, which when coupled with its large silhouette in a turn mean that both of them should leverage their acceleration and low cross-section silhouette to their advantage when running away from direct threats, not attacking them. The limited DPS
it doesn't look like there's
also
anything up top.
is a bit of a problem if you're looking to take this into PvP. I definitely wouldn't do that, but it's probably good enough to serve for some moderate PvE. In that regard, the C1 may be a better option for solo pilots or ones looking for a little bit more DPS output. The ship also has 8 size 4 missiles, a good munition size that can do a lot of damage if it hits, and that's kind of the big problem with Star Citizen, so depending on the patch, it's hard to say whether or not this is going to make a difference.
Yeah,
Both
the
ships
missile bay
come with a single size 2 quantum drive, 2 size 2 coolers, 2 size 2 power plants, and 4 size 2 shields, so it's moderately well equipped and defended. The Zeus Mark II then is an excellent example of CIG's more refined ship pipeline. Not only
so this
has
thing
it
is
a
kind of
compelling,
balanced,
exciting exterior design, but its interior design does more with less. The biggest problem with the Zeus is that it's going to make a lot of older ships and even newer ships feel less well refined. Already I'm looking back at the C1 single corridor design with its only 1 egress point and limited interior as less well done, considering it has the same size. In fact, it's even wider than the Zeus, but has less interior space, or at least it feels smaller. All in all, this new design language they're going for RSI ships makes me very excited about the Polaris, and I'm sure they've been using this as a learning experience back and forth between the Polaris and the Zeus, and later ships like the Galaxy and the Perseus soon to enter the SC universe sometime, probably next year. I'm glad I picked up a Polaris then last year, and this one even earlier. The Zeus Mark II isn't currently available on sale on the website if you guys are interested, so I don't know how much it's going to cost in real money. It'll probably be around 150 to 200 bucks, depending on the variant you want to buy. But remember that all ships in Star Citizen, when they're released, become available 3 months after their initial release, so you don't need to spend any real money. So what are you guys thinking? Are you going to pick one up, or are you going to grind for one in game? Let me know down in the comment section below. I, for one, think the Zeus is one of the best ships CIG has ever done, and I hope it helps inform how to make other ships in the game even better, especially ones that haven't yet made it in. I'm Morphologis. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, you know what to do. Hope to see you in the next one.
Okay, before I forget what he said there at the end, this ship is like $150 to $200. God, man. But anyways, I say the ship is like balanced in a way, the cargo, the defense, the attack, and the piloting. But however, it looks like it's a little bit more less on the defense side, because you know some ships are like known for its cargo and or it's meant for its firepower, things like that. But this one feels like it's more like I said, balanced. And if you look at the exterior, I mean not exterior, the interior, it has a huge space for cargo. But however, once you go past those doors into like, you know, personal space and the galley, as he mentioned, and near the flight deck, it's very cramped and very small. So obviously they put a lot more space and thought into the space for the cargo rather than for personal reasons. Wait, like I said, the blue looks really good on the RSI Zeus and looks like it is its signature color. But besides that, I mean, because since it's RSI, it has that like triangle signature look. Because you know the Polaris has it, the I think the Bengal also has it. So I guess that is something that RSI patented and copyrighted. But either way, this was a really great ship. I do remember a little bit about it. I do remember the tractor beam arm that was in the back near the cargo door, mentioned in the Inside Star Citizen video. But besides that, this was pretty much kind of like a refresher, and the interior was a little bit more new to me. I mean, the Inside Star Citizen covered the cargo area, but however, it didn't really cover like the personal living quarters that much. So that was that was really interesting. So I guess overall from Morphologis, it is a pretty good ship, but I'm not spending $200 on something like that, to be honest. So anyways, that's all I got for today. So again, shout out and credit goes to Morphologis for the video and for the review. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. So without anything else, see you guys next time.